Thank you, President Peter. This morning I happened to see a photo actually at the office of the Auditor General's that made me think of the change in the world of work. It was a social function for the Office of the Auditor General. Year 1960, hands up those of you who were working in 1960. I wasn't, some of you. And this was a social function in some park. Along one side was a great long line of men. On the other side, quite close to them, was a great long line of women in pretty dresses with nice cardies. And it was some sort of speed thing about lighting a cigarette. And the women were all lighting the cigarettes for the men. And I sat there pondering. In fact, I was late getting to the meeting, really, because it was such an interesting photo. And it seems to me quite opportune. That happened at about 9 o'clock this morning, and here we are talking about the future of the work. Very interesting for our club to have Ruth McDavitt along, particularly those of us who are interested in internships as part of the expansion of Eureka. Ruth is the first CE of the Summer of Technology, which sounds like that movie, Summer of? Was it the Summer of 66 or something like that? Summer of something. That's right, Summer of Love, yes. And her topic is, what will our grandkids be doing? Many of us here, actually, in a tech sense, already wonder what on earth our kids are doing, let alone the next generation down. So it's a great opportunity for us to listen to Ruth with her internship hat on, and also she has addressed the Labour Party's Future of Work conference too. So marvellous opportunity. She's going to speak for a bit and then we'll be open for questions. Thanks, Ruth.
Thanks, Lee, and thanks everybody for having me. Apologies, I've got notes. I don't usually do this, but I've had a pretty full-on weekend. We just ran what's called a hack fest. I won't explain the inner workings, but it was lots of fun, and it was a big weekend. In the last fortnight, I've been working with MB. We've got some funding from MB to run what we're calling Tupu Tech. Tupu is growing, tech is technology, but it's spelt in the way that they spell it in Papua New Guinea. I've been going into university classes and trying to persuade Pacifica students who've made it to university that whatever they happen to be studying is actually relevant for the technology industry and for our future. Really trying to help the browning of the Kiwi workforce be in high-value jobs as well. So I was sort of inspired by your session this morning. I'm going to recreate what I've been doing in the various university campuses around New Zealand. Just ask if there's anybody here in the room who likes technology, likes maths, hates maths, likes people, hates people, feeling social, feeling antisocial, ever been on the internet? My point for everybody is what I'm trying to help the IT industry achieve in New Zealand, which is to become more inclusive, because unfortunately or fortunately, technology has pretty much the printing press of our generation and the ones to come. Let's see what we can do. Ta-da! Kia ora everybody, my name is Ruth McDavitt. I don't have any grandchildren and I don't have any pets, but we will see how we go. As I introduce a 7-year-old who recently, her name's Isabella, and she does the Snapchat thing. Don't know if you've seen these, but she doesn't actually wear glasses, but this was pretty exciting. There was a dress-up day at school, dress up with what you want to be when you grow up. Isabella really wants to be an accountant like her dad. Which is fantastic, and we're encouraging this as a wider family. And just sort of casting your mind back to how accountancy, particularly small business accountancy, may have changed in my lifetime and in your lifetime, and what it might possibly look like in Isabella's lifetime. We've gone from, not in my lifetime to be fair, the abacus. Calculators were a thing, even when I was at university. Excel spreadsheets came along and sort of revolutionised the day-to-day work of most accountants and most business people. Now, in Wellington, we have the birth of something called Xero with an X, which has essentially completely disrupted and panicked a lot of accountancy firms. So the change that's happening at that rate is quite scary when Bella hits the workforce. So my advice to Isabella, my beloved niece, is that maths is awesome. Numbers is fantastic. Get into it, problem solving. Learn about businesses. Think about how you're going to help people analyse stuff. These are all amazing skills that she needs to have whatever her future looks like. Accountancy might not be called that when she hits the job market. The job market might not be such a thing when she gets there. The only thing that I can tell for certain is that her career is going to be absolutely nothing like my brother's career. Meet Nathan. Nathan wants to be Thomas the Tank Engine when he grows up. Nathan may well get to drive one of the amazing magnetic levitation trains that they're actually currently building in Japan. I was there a couple of weeks ago, bloomin' awesome. I thought the bullet train was amazing, but I tell you what's coming is even more fantastic. Nathan may well end up being some kind of urban designer. He could even be a crane operator, because I imagine someday, he does like cranky just about as much as Thomas, someday we'll still be building things. My advice to Nathan is not to learn how to drive a steam engine, although we can have some fun visiting the playgrounds and imagining it, but it's trying to foster an engineering mindset. Systems thinking is going to be extremely useful, whatever Nathan ends up doing in his life. The skills he's developing as a 4-year-old around spatial awareness, around stacking things up, letting things fall down, solving problems, negotiating with his sister who also likes to play with the train tracks. All these kinds of skills are going to really serve him well in whatever future we have created for him. This is my official start to the talk. This is my introduction. Sorry for the long title. When I was actually quite relieved to discover that Grant had a massive topic shift last week given political events, so I am going to cover a little bit about the future of work, which has capital letters these days because it's a thing. But I'm going to start with me. My name is Ruth. I grew up in Wadestown, Ahumairangi Te Maunga, so just over there, Tinakori Hill. I went to Wadestown Primary School, Wellington High School. I'm one of those people with a BA from Victoria University. Old English Literature, honours, fantastic. Spent 10 years overseas, got the travel bug, loved it to bits. Came home, mid-20s, no idea. Ended up working for family friends who own a shop called Common Sense Organics, which was fantastic. Really enjoyed that. Somehow segued magically, almost in Jeff's time actually, into economic development. And then I was doing some business mentoring, and then fast forward to right now, I find myself running a technology internship program. So on behalf of the Wellington businesses who were saying to me very loudly and clearly that we need to support the tertiaries and the high schools, they're falling behind. The education system cannot keep up with what we need. We need skills, we need them now. This week I spent 6 hours of my life sitting on the advisory board for the School of Engineering and Computer Science. My mother is laughing. We were talking about their new degree in robotics engineering and what papers, what maths and physics papers we possibly need to jam into first year so that by the time they get to third year they're going to become aspiring robotics engineers. Blows my mind that I'm sitting on this advisory board. I'm telling you my story because I think Bella and Nathan's story is going to be similar, and it might even be crazier. There's a really good something that you can Google on the internet, a YouTube video by a speaker called Claudia Batten. So she's working at NZTE where I used to work. She's got a really amazing talk on the squiggly line. So my career follows a very similar squiggly line, and I promise you the squiggles are getting a little bit crazier. I'd also like to point out that I'm not an artist, and you'll discover this very quickly. So I'm grounding my talk in Aotearoa. I'm doing a little bit of history, and then I'm going to fast forward to the future. There are some international trends, and the Uber part of my long title reflects on that. The changing business models, the changes that technology is making on all aspects of our lives. A little bit of facts for the people who like data. There was a recent McKinsey report which talked about the disruption that we're experiencing today around technology. It's happening 10 times faster than the Industrial Revolution, and it's having 300 times the scale. If you do the maths on that, the revolution, the technology revolution that we are in right now will have 3,000 times the impact of the Industrial Revolution. So companies like Uber, who are disrupting taxi drivers, Airbnb, who are disrupting the hotel industry, they're cutting out the bigger, slower-moving incumbents, creating and serving a digital-savvy, more of a peer-to-peer marketplace. We're seeing a little of this in New Zealand too. This gig economy, I'll get into that a little bit later on. There's freelancers working when you want, for who you want. It's all flexibility. It's also minimum rights and benefits. There's two sides to this amazing technology revolution. The social contract is changing along with the technology that we're implementing. For the past 150 years-ish, the norm for workers in New Zealand has been pretty much a permanent job, sick pay, holiday, certainty, no more. The robots are coming. They say that we tend to vastly overestimate the changes that are going to happen in the next 2 years. At the same time, we vastly underestimate the changes that are going to happen in the next 10 years. The robots have not yet taken all our jobs, but automation and artificial intelligence is definitely affecting jobs now, particularly low-skilled ones. When I'm talking to Bella about what she's learning at school, I'm very conscious of anything that she's learning by rote will be automated. That's a very scary fact for our educational institutions that have been built on this for hundreds of years. The technology is bringing opportunities for more people to be employed, absolutely. Never before in history have privileged, disabled people had so much support and opportunity to enter into paid employment should they want it. You can't read? No problem. Audio, text stuff. Text to voice will happen. Can't physically get to work? No problem. Remote working. We have this distributed team model, particularly in almost every industry except the services industry. So technology is, on the one hand, a huge equaliser for people who were previously disadvantaged. On that disabled and on my comments, the disability access and the inclusive aspects that I was talking about with the Pacifica students, I just wanted to say that we're seeing some really interesting statistics in terms of the tech employers proactively wanting to hire people from minority groups. So some quick stats on IT, because I know it quite well. 20% of the IT industry in New Zealand are women, 80% are men that's working in industry. The current enrolments of Victoria in the engineering and computer science, 17% and dropping quite drastically over the last 10 years. Through Summer of Tech, the internship program that I run, last year we got 36% women into technology roles. So we're seeing a very good positive reinforcement there. We do have a problem with the education system, and I'm not here to blame it for anything. We are definitely here to try and support it. The pipeline problem that we're seeing with women coming to tertiary study is particularly noticed in the last 5 years that high schools are incentivised to get all their students with the highest grades. If it's easier for students to do arts or languages, then they will go down that pathway. They may not be encouraged to do the science and maths. The robots are definitely coming. Should we be worried? I've just had that was 10 minutes. I'm going to speed up with my history lesson. My lesson is that we can keep calm and carry on. What's coming may not be that scary. I'm going to go do a quick whiz back in time. I think that's my next slide. To the story of the kumara. This is Hohepa, who would not have been called Hohepa for those with a bit of colonial history. Pre-European arrival, we have the technology, which is our digging stick. That's our tools. We're harvesting the kumara. He doesn't have a job as such. He's got a bit of a gig economy going on. Pretty much does what he needs to do, trades with the iwi, with a hapu over the hill to get what he needs done. Then we have Joseph in the Industrial Revolution. The tools may have changed. The kumara is still in the picture. I would suspect that it's probably made the way my grandma used to make it, boil it to smithereens, mash it up with some carrots. All good. Working in a factory, we have an hourly wage. We're definitely expecting to be in the same job for the rest of our lives, and not a lot of gig economy going on here. The next revolution was social as well as technological. Joanna is in the workforce. That means that we have a whole lot more people who are employed. I'd say that the rise of the gig economy at this time could potentially be that there may be a house cleaner, there may be more childcare required if Joanna's in the workforce. The freelancers as such may also be employed under this particular economic model. The kumara in this picture is kumara chips, which means that there are people employed to be processing, packaging, marketing and distributing our kumara. Joe is blasting into the future on a hoverboard. It's definitely the future because we haven't quite got those hoverboards off the ground yet. The micronutrient kumara smoothie is in her hand as she blasts into the future. She may or may not have a job. Definitely Grandpa Joseph would not recognise the lifestyle that Joe has now, and great-great-great-grandpa Hohepa might actually understand the gig economy and the trading and the enterprise skills that she needs to develop. So my argument here is that we are kind of back to the future, excuse the pun, that the kumara will still be there. The food that we eat, the tools may change. Our society will essentially be the same. I won't go into the social stuff of that because that's a whole other talk. Whatever is next kind of looks like this. It's a bit wobbly, as I said, not an artist. It's the same rock that we're standing on. The past 150 years there has been a massive change, but the opportunity, the world has got bigger and it's also got a lot smaller. The definition of what we consider in New Zealand a basic need has changed dramatically from Hohepa's time and Joseph's time and Joanna's time. It is absolutely up to us to shape the future for our grandchildren, because our grandchildren are definitely going to shape it for us. Don't like that rest home comment. So my question is, what is the most important thing? He aha te mea nui o te ao. He kumara, he kumara. He tangata, he tangata, he tangata. My argument and my advice for Bella and Nathan as they go into the world is people are the most important thing. They will be a constant. Technology is the tool that we're currently using to engage with each other. It's dangerous, but if it's used wisely, it doesn't have to be dangerous. So the kumara may not speak of how sweet it is. I will speak for it. I think that the opportunity for your grandchildren, maybe not your four-legged ones, for the next generation, is to focus on what you do best. Think about the skills that involve people, business, making the world a better place. The technology is changing. The future is not evenly distributed, but it is here. If I'm talking to young people, the key thing for them is learn how to learn. You're going to need to be adaptable. You're going to need to deal with other people. You're probably going to need to deal with machines. The future generations will have amazing technology skills that will just completely blow our mind. It's their communication skills, social skills, enterprise skills that are going to help them navigate the gig economy. So whether they choose to study or not, arts, commerce, law, politics, linguistics, languages, music, computer science, creative stuff, it really doesn't matter. The fundamental needs of humans will continue to be the same, and the simple things that connect us to the land and to each other are what really, really matter. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Perfect timing. We've got time for questions. Please. Peter.
Ruth, thanks very much. In your research, do you get any idea why women are not going into technology and into engineering? Is there a reason why the numbers, the percentage are dropping?
Yes and no. So the reasons seem to be parents, teachers, community. Also, as I said before, if the easier pathway is easier, if you're not comfortable with failure, if you're not encouraged to fail as a very, very early child, it means that you will not choose that pathway. The event that I ran on the weekend, I was tearing my hair out. In the last week, so we had 40 software developer students and 10 design students. The last week I had 13 female developers pull out of 40. And so I was left with one. And I was tearing my hair out. And at one stage, I had 3 judges, and 2 of them were called Mark, and the other one was not a woman. So it's really, really hard. I think there's a huge amount that the universities can do to change their culture, and they are slowly changing, but it needs to happen faster. So yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on this, but I will stop.
It's time for more if somebody else has got a question. Yes.
What about the people that fall beneath the cracks? I mean, we're in a technological world at the moment. I think most of us olders actually accept that, and you've got to ride with it and understand it as best you can. But we've got a lot of social difficulties further down the track with kids who mainly, or largely, it's parental problems and lack of discipline. Is there a method that you could drag these people up into this world that you've described, which is great, but we've got these social problems, and one often wonders how one can improve kids at that level.
Oh, good question. My partner has a PhD in boot camps, and he's been called this week quite often by the media. Apparently there's a boot camp thing going on. My answer to that is that some of them will thrive in this new economy. They're enterprising skills. They may be into dealing other things, but wheeling and dealing is a skill. I think channeled correctly, they can definitely thrive in this new economy. Some people don't suit the 9-to-5 office-bound work environment. So I've seen a lot of kids who I would have considered off that spectrum actually thrive in the IT space. But I think there's always going to be a challenge in any population around behaviour and all that kind of thing. So I don't have the easy answer, but Bob Maxwell, PhD in motivation and boot camps.
Time for another quick one. Anna.
Most of us have grown up in an era where we've had to get a degree or a qualification to move on. In your thinking, what will happen to that notion of having to go to university or a polytechnic to get a qualification to work and to succeed?
In IT it's changing, but it hasn't changed yet. There are things called nano degrees. There's a lot of online self-directed learning that is definitely available. I mean, Stanford makes most of its classes open source. So if you're a self-directed learner who doesn't mind looking at a screen by yourself all the time, then there are a lot of different pathways. At the moment, so the Wellington businesses that we're working with value a lot the discipline, the critical thinking, the maturity, the interpersonal skills that come from spending 1, 2, 3, 4 years in a tertiary institution. So I'm still encouraging that higher education. However, we do see new models for education like the Dev Academy, which is New Zealand's version of a boot camp, if you like, different kind, which is a 15-week, very intensive software development course. So there are lots of different ways to cut the education. The degree is not dead yet. It's still very much important for those higher value technology jobs that are out there. Yeah.
Thanks. It's time for Lee to say thanks.
Ruth, on behalf of the club, I'd really like to thank you for a wide-ranging and stimulating speech to us, and your artistic efforts too. You notice the hairdo on the last person? She's taken over. And thinking about our grandchildren and that generation, what we're really looking for in Rotary is, well, how do we help these kids along, really? It doesn't really matter how it affects us particularly, but what can we do for these young people? And the lessons that I took from what Ruth was saying was that we need to be somehow encouraging people to just keep learning and to learn how to learn, which means probably we need to be thinking about that in ourselves. It's going to be a very different form of learning from what we had. Secondly, encouraging and somehow enabling people to maintain themselves through a gig economy so that they can look after themselves in terms of lack of health and other benefits, but also create future gigs for themselves. And thirdly, to think very hard about the effects on the brain of not learning by rote. And do we lose something beyond our beloved timetables or Is there something we should be doing instead of learning by rote? So lots of thought for us as parents, grandparents, citizens, and lots of opportunity for Rotary in there somewhere. So thank you, Ruth.